My husband and his brother planted fake hotel bookings in my deleted emails at 3 a.m. while I slept to frame me for cheating with a fictional man named Jason, so I stayed silent. That was 5 years ago. His brother just confessed everything, and my ex has been sitting in his car outside the coffee shop where we had our first date for 9 hours. 5 years ago, my husband destroyed my life with an elaborate lie that I'm only now learning the truth about. After 6 perfect years together, he accused me of having an affair with someone named Jason, a man who never existed. The evidence he showed me was so convincing that even I started to doubt my own sanity. Growing up, my home life was a mess, and I never thought real love existed, since all I ever saw was cheating and dishonesty from my parents and their new partners. But my husband seemed totally different. He showed me what love was. He loved me in a way that nobody else ever could, and he truly made me happy. When we were young, he talked about our future in a way that would make me giggle on the inside. I would blush whenever I would see him. He was truly the love of my life. His love never seemed to fade for me either. He would surprise me with flowers, random dates, even entire holidays. I was on top of the world with him. Marrying him was the happiest day of my entire life. I remember walking down the aisle and seeing him cry, and that made me cry. We said our vows and went on an amazing honeymoon to Rome. Our relationship was perfect up until the day he accused me of cheating. There was never any sign of anything going wrong. The largest argument we'd ever had was about what meat I wanted for dinner. I remember we were talking about having kids, and one day he came home looking furious. I had never seen him get angry once, so this took me by surprise. I asked him what's wrong, and he said not to lie to him. I was utterly confused, and then he asked me if I was seeing anyone named Jason. I asked him who Jason was, as I was just as confused as he was by this accusation which seemingly came out of nowhere. However, my husband proceeded to get even more angry. I started trying to explain myself, and he shot me down, telling me to give him my phone. Of course I obliged. I had nothing to hide. He proceeded to go through my phone and find nothing, and I was telling him the whole time how there was nothing there. He then went into my emails and looked through them. I kept telling him he wouldn't find anything, because I was loyal to him. But somehow, in the deleted section of my emails, was a booking for a hotel room for 2 people and a double bed from a few weeks ago. Considering this was a hotel my husband and I never visited, my husband flipped out when he saw it. I was taken aback and confused, and I looked at this email over and over trying to figure out how this could have gotten here. I tried to reassure him that someone must have put this here, and I swore on my life that I never cheated. He asked me how could I, and then pulled up a screenshot on his phone of a Tinder profile of me talking with someone named Jason about booking the exact hotel for us 2 on my email. I started crying because this was all fake. Somebody had set me up. My crying made me look even more guilty. I tried telling him this was fake, that the Tinder account isn't real, but he claimed I probably just deleted it, but didn't remember to fully delete the email. I kept crying and telling him that I didn't do it, but he didn't believe me. He packed his bags and left that day. All the while, I kept crying and begging him to believe me, but he never did. I can't tell you how many times I called him and asked him to come back, that I never cheated, but he never listened. He filed for divorce, and I was forced to go through with it. The divorce process wasn't nasty on his side. He didn't try any dirty tricks. The entire time throughout the process, he would ask me, "How could you?" And each time I defended myself saying I never did, and begging him to please believe me. The divorce took about 8 months, and I was a shell of my former self. I slumped into an alcohol binge and started partaking in recreational drugs. Life without him was bleak. All of a sudden, the thoughts of 10-year-old me were right. There is no love. Life will never grant you something as beautiful as love. Why couldn't he just believe me? I thought to myself. I attended therapy, but nothing helped. It took me 2 years to even start getting over it, and 3 years to be able to talk about him without breaking down into tears. It's now been 5 years, and I really thought I was over it. But I got a message from my ex-brother-in-law a few days ago that has had me crying nonstop since. Hey, the guilt has been weighing on me nonstop. For the past 5 years, I have tried my best to keep it a secret, but every night I wake up seeing you're crying, and I remember how much the divorce hurt you. I know you didn't cheat. Your husband knows this too. There never was a Jason. Your husband wanted out of the relationship. He never truly loved you. He felt so bad for you and wanted to give you the life you deserve because you loved him so much. He tried his very best for so long. I called him so many times for so long, and each time he would tell me about how he's not sure he can keep up his act of love any longer. He wanted a way out without breaking up with you because it wasn't working, and he couldn't bring himself to be an asshole to you in the relationship, so he decided to accuse you of cheating. I helped him. While you slept, I sent a booking of a hotel room to your phone, which he then transferred to your bin in the emails. You never checked your emails, so he had nothing to worry about. I set up the fake Tinder profile as you, and he set one up as Jason. He accused you the next day. I'm sorry. The message went on to explain exactly how they planted the evidence while I slept, how they created fake profiles, how my husband had been planning this for months. 5 years of therapy, 5 years of self-doubt, 5 years of wondering what I did wrong, all based on an elaborate lie. And the worst part? His brother knew the whole time and helped him do it. I stared at the message on my phone screen until the words blurred together. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The coffee mug I'd been holding slipped from my fingers and shattered on the kitchen floor, but I didn't move to clean it up. I just stood there, brown liquid pooling around my bare feet, reading David's confession over and over. 5 years. 5 years of therapy sessions where I sobbed about my inability to remember cheating. 5 years of waking up at 3 a.m., frantically searching through old emails and messages, trying to find some clue about this Jason person. 5 years of my mother telling me that maybe I'd blocked out the memory because the guilt was too much. 5 years of wondering if I'd had some kind of mental breakdown and forgotten an entire affair. I sank to the floor, not caring about the coffee soaking through my pajama pants. My phone buzzed again. Another message from David. I know this is a lot to process. I'm so sorry, Linda. I've wanted to tell you for so long, but John made me promise. But I can't live with it anymore. You deserve to know the truth. I typed back with trembling fingers. Why? Why would he do this to me? The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. He said he felt trapped. He told me he tried to love you the way you loved him, but he couldn't. He said watching you look at him with such adoration made him feel sick because he knew he was lying to you every single day. I threw my phone across the kitchen. It hit the refrigerator and clattered to the floor. I pulled my knees to my chest and sobbed harder than I had in years. Not the controlled crying I'd learned in therapy, but the ugly, gasping kind that made my whole body shake. The memories came flooding back. John bringing me breakfast in bed every Sunday, kissing my forehead and telling me I was his whole world. The surprise trip to Paris for our anniversary where he'd arranged for a private dinner cruise on the Seine. The way he'd held me when my stepfather died, even though I'd had a complicated relationship with him. Every gesture, every loving word, every tender moment, all of it had been an act. I crawled across the floor to retrieve my phone, glass crunching under my palms. There were more messages from David. He called me the night before he accused you. He was crying. He said he couldn't do it anymore, couldn't keep pretending. He'd been planning it for months, trying to find the perfect way out that wouldn't destroy you. He thought if you believed you'd done something wrong, it would be easier for you to move on. Easier to move on. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed in my empty kitchen. I'd spent 2 years barely able to get out of bed. I'd lost my job because I couldn't focus, couldn't stop crying during meetings. I'd pushed away every friend who tried to help because I was convinced I was a terrible person who'd somehow cheated and blocked it out. I'd spent thousands of dollars on therapy, trying to recover memories that never existed. I stood up on shaky legs and walked to the bathroom, leaving bloody footprints from the glass. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back wasn't the confident, happy person I'd been during my marriage. She was hollow-eyed and thin, aged beyond her years by guilt and self-doubt. My phone rang. David's name appeared on the screen. I answered without thinking. "Linda, I'm so sorry," he said immediately. "I know this is devastating, but you needed to know. It's been eating me alive watching you blame yourself all these years. Tell me everything," I whispered. "I need to know exactly what happened." David took a shaky breath. "John had been unhappy for a while. He never told you because he said you'd done nothing wrong. You were perfect," he said. Too perfect. He felt like he was suffocating under the weight of your love because he couldn't reciprocate it genuinely. I slid down the bathroom wall, phone pressed to my ear. "But he seemed so happy. He never showed any signs." "He's a good actor," David said bitterly. "He practiced his responses to your I love yous in the mirror. He set reminders on his phone for romantic gestures. He researched what good husbands were supposed to do and followed it like a script. But inside, he was miserable. The night he accused me," I said, my voice cracking, "he seemed so genuinely hurt, so betrayed. He practiced that too. He called me before he came home to you, running through what he was going to say. He even practiced crying. He said it had to be believable or you'd never buy it. I ran to the toilet and vomited, my body rejecting this truth as violently as my mind was." David was still talking when I picked up the phone again. "The Tinder profiles were my idea. John wanted something you couldn't disprove. We knew you'd never used Tinder, so you couldn't definitively say the profile was fake. We made Jason seem real, gave him a job, hobbies, a backstory. John even created a fake social media profile for him in case you tried to investigate." "Stop," I gasped. "Please, just stop for a minute." But I needed to hear it all. After a few minutes of silence, I asked, "The hotel booking?" "I did that while you were asleep. John gave me your phone passcode. I booked it, sent the confirmation to your email, then deleted it from your inbox but left it in the trash. John knew you never checked your deleted emails. It was perfect evidence. Something you couldn't explain but also couldn't remember doing. Perfect evidence. Perfect crime. Perfect betrayal. During the divorce," I said slowly, "he kept asking me how I could do it. He made me feel so guilty. He said that was the hardest part," David admitted. "Watching you beg and plead, he almost broke several times. But he told himself it was better this way, that you'd heal faster if you had something concrete to blame, even if it was yourself." I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. I stumbled to my bedroom and collapsed on the bed, the same bed where John had held me countless nights, whispering promises of forever. The same bed where I'd slept peacefully while David planted evidence of my fictional betrayal. My laptop sat on the nightstand. With shaking hands, I opened it and logged into Facebook. I hadn't looked at John's profile in over 2 years. My therapist had recommended avoiding triggers, but now I needed to see. His profile picture showed him smiling on a beach somewhere, a pretty brunette beside him. They looked happy, genuinely happy in a way we'd never been, apparently. I scrolled through his posts. An engagement announcement from 6 months ago. Photos from trips and parties. A life built on the ruins of mine. I found our old photos, the ones I couldn't bring myself to delete. Our wedding day, our trip to Rome, Christmas mornings and birthday dinners. In every single one, I was gazing at him with pure adoration while he smiled at the camera. Now I could see it. The performance in his eyes. The calculated angle of his embrace. I closed the laptop and grabbed my car keys. I needed to move, to do something other than sit in this apartment where every corner held a memory that was now tainted. The parking garage spun as I stumbled toward my car, but I kept walking. My hands fumbled with the keys until I finally managed to unlock the door. The engine roared to life, and I pulled out without any destination in mind. The city streets blurred past as I drove, taking turns at random. My phone kept buzzing in the cup holder. David calling again, probably worried about what I might do. I ignored it. 20 minutes later, I found myself parked outside the coffee shop where John and I had our first date. The same wooden benches sat outside, the same faded awning hung over the entrance. I remembered sitting across from him, nervously stirring my latte while he told me about his job in marketing. He'd seemed so genuine then, leaning forward with interest when I talked about my work as a graphic designer. Had he been acting even then? My phone rang again. This time it was my best friend Eleanor, or rather, former best friend. I'd pushed her away during the divorce when she gently suggested that maybe I should consider the possibility that I'd made a mistake. The betrayal of her not believing me had been too much to bear. Now I realized she'd just been trying to help me move forward from something that had never even happened. I answered on the 5th ring. "Ellie? Linda? Oh my god, I saw you called earlier but didn't leave a message. Are you okay? You sound..." She paused. "Have you been crying?" The concern in her voice broke something inside me. "Can I come over? I need to tell someone." "Of course. I'm home. Linda, what's going on?" "I'll explain when I get there." The drive to Eleanor's house took 15 minutes. She lived in the same suburban neighborhood where we'd once talked about buying houses next to each other, back when I thought my future included growing old with John. She was waiting on her front porch when I pulled up, still in her work clothes despite it being past 9 at night. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. I collapsed against her, sobbing into her shoulder while she rubbed my back and murmured soothing words. When I finally pulled away, she guided me inside and sat me down on her couch. "Talk to me," she said, handing me a box of tissues. So I did. I showed her David's messages, watching her face transform from confusion to shock to absolute fury as she read. When she finished, she set my phone down carefully, like it might explode. "That bastard," she whispered. whispered. That absolute bastard. And David, too. How could he wait 5 years to tell you? He said the guilt was eating him alive, I said, my voice hoarse from crying. He said he wakes up every night seeing me cry. Eleanor's expression hardened. Good. He should feel guilty. They both should. Linda, this is psychological torture. What they did to you is unforgivable. She got up and paced around her living room, running her hands through her hair. I mean, who does that? Who plans something so elaborate, so cruel? And for what? Because he couldn't just be honest and say he wanted a divorce? He said he felt bad for me, I said, the words tasting bitter. He wanted to give me the life I deserved because I loved him so much. Like I was some pathetic charity case he needed to manage carefully. Eleanor stopped pacing and looked at me. You know what the worst part is? He made you doubt yourself. He made you question your own memory, your own sanity. Do you know what that's called? Gaslighting. He gaslit you in the most extreme way possible. I hadn't thought of it that way, but she was right. For 5 years, I'd questioned everything about myself. Was I the type of person who could cheat and forget? Had I been drinking too much and blacked out? Was there something fundamentally wrong with me that I could betray someone I loved and not remember? I need a drink, Eleanor announced, heading to her kitchen. She returned with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Actually, we both need a drink. As she poured, my phone buzzed again. Another message from David. Linda, please let me know you're okay. I'm worried about you. Eleanor saw it too. The audacity, she muttered. Now he's worried? Where was this concern 5 years ago when you were falling apart? I took a long sip of wine, feeling the warmth spread through my chest. He said John called him for months beforehand, talking about how he couldn't keep up the act anymore. Months, Ellie. While I was planning our future, picking out baby names, he was planning how to destroy me. What are you going to do? Eleanor asked. Are you going to confront John? I've been asking myself the same question since reading David's first message. Part of me wanted to drive to John's house right now, to scream at him, to make him face what he'd done, but another part of me never wanted to see him again. I don't know, I admitted. What would be the point? He's engaged now. He's moved on. He got exactly what he wanted. But you deserve answers, Eleanor insisted. Real answers from him, not filtered through David's guilt. My phone rang. David again. This time, Eleanor grabbed it and answered. David? This is Eleanor, Linda's friend. The one who watched her nearly drink herself to death because of what you and your brother did. Her voice was ice cold. No, she's not okay. How could she be okay? You just destroyed her entire understanding of the most important relationship of her life. I could hear David's voice through the phone, high and panicked, but couldn't make out the words. Eleanor listened for a moment, then cut him off. Save it. Your guilt doesn't mean anything now. You had 5 years to come clean. 5 years while she tortured herself, went to therapy, took antidepressants, tried to figure out how she could have done something so out of character. You watched all of that and stayed silent. She paused, listening again. What? He what? Her eyes widened and she looked at me. David says John doesn't know he's told you. He says John specifically made him promise never to tell. I reached for the phone and Eleanor handed it over. David? Linda, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I am. And John, he has no idea I've contacted you. He thinks the secret died with the divorce. Where is he now? I asked. He lives in Riverside Heights with his fiancée. They're getting married next month. Linda, please don't do anything rash. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. Riverside Heights, I repeated. That was only 20 minutes away. All this time, he'd been 20 minutes away, living his perfect new life while I struggled to rebuild mine from the ashes of his lies. I have to go, I said, and hung up. Eleanor watched me carefully. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about how he cried at our wedding, I said. Real tears, or at least they looked real. I'm thinking about how he held me when I had nightmares about my parents' fights. I'm thinking about every single moment of our relationship and wondering what was real and what was performance. I stood up, suddenly restless. You know what the cruelest part is? He took away my ability to trust my own judgment. I thought I could read people. I thought I could tell when someone was being genuine. But I lived with him for 6 years and never suspected a thing. Eleanor stood too, placing a hand on my arm. That's not your fault. You loved him. You trusted him. That's what you're supposed to do in a marriage. But I should have seen something, I insisted. Some sign, some crack in the facade. How good of an actor do you have to be to fake love for 6 years? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. It was a screenshot of a social media post from John's fiancée. 1 month until I marry the love of my life. Can't wait to be Mrs. Patterson. The message underneath read, thought you should see this. He's doing it again. D. I showed Eleanor, who gasped. Is David saying what I think he's saying? I called David back immediately. He answered on the first ring. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sent that. I've been watching him with Cassandra, and it's the same thing all over again. The same practice gestures, the same calculated romance. She's a sweet girl, Linda. She reminds me of you, actually. Trusting, loving, from a difficult background. You think he's going to do it to her too? I asked. I don't know. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he really loves her. But sometimes when I see them together, I see that same look in his eyes, that trapped look. And I think about you, about what we did to you. And I can't stand the thought of it happening again. Eleanor, who had been listening closely, grabbed the phone. Then why don't you warn her? Why contact Linda and not this Cassandra person? Because she won't believe me, David said, his voice tinny through the speaker. John's already told her about Linda, told her his ex-wife cheated and broke his heart. She thinks Linda is the villain in his story. If I tried to tell her the truth, John would just say I'm lying, that I'm trying to break them up. She'd believe him, just like everyone else did. I took the phone back. Everyone else? Our parents, our friends, everyone. John's performance was flawless. He had everyone convinced that he was the heartbroken victim. Mom still asks if he's heard from you, if you ever apologized. It makes me sick. I sank back onto the couch, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the deception. It wasn't just John who had betrayed me. It was an entire network of people who had believed his lies, who had looked at me with pity or disgust, thinking I was the cheater who had broken a good man's heart. I have to go, I said abruptly. I need to think. Linda, wait. I hung up and turned to Eleanor. I need to be alone for a while. Thank you for listening, for believing leaving me. She looked worried. Are you sure you should be alone right now? You can stay here tonight. No, I need to go home. I need to process this. I hugged her tightly. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept cycling through memories, analyzing them with this new information. The time John had surprised me with a weekend getaway to a bed and breakfast. Had he marked it on his calendar weeks in advance? A chore to complete? The love letters he used to leave in my lunch bag? Had he Googled romantic phrases? Back in my apartment, I went straight to my closet and pulled out the box I'd hidden in the back. The divorce box, my therapist had called it. A place to put all the reminders of my marriage so they wouldn't be constantly triggering me. Inside were wedding photos, love letters, ticket stubs from dates, the dried flowers from my bouquet. I spread everything out on my living room floor, studying each item like evidence in a crime scene. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? A crime scene. The scene of a 5-year deception that had started long before the fake cheating accusation. There was a photo from our honeymoon in Rome, standing in front of the Trevi fountain. I remembered insisting we throw coins in, making a wish to be together forever. John had laughed and called me superstitious, but he'd thrown a coin too. What had he wished for? An escape plan? My laptop dinged with an email notification. Without thinking, I opened it. The sender's name made my heart stop. John Patterson. Linda, David told me he contacted you. We need to talk. J. 3 sentences. After 5 years of silence, 3 sentences. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. He knew. He knew that I knew. The secret was out, and now he wanted to talk. I typed and deleted a dozen responses. What was there to say? How could words encompass the devastation he'd caused? Finally, I settled on, why? His response came quickly. Not over email. Can we meet? Please. The word please made me laugh bitterly, as if he had any right to ask me for anything. But I found myself typing, tomorrow, noon, the coffee shop on 5th Street. Thank you. I'll be there. I closed the laptop and looked around my apartment. In 12 hours, I would be face to face with the man who had destroyed me. The man I'd loved with every fiber of my being, who had loved me back with nothing but calculated performances. I picked up one of our wedding photos, studying John's face. He was smiling widely, his hand on my waist, looking every inch the happy groom. But now I could see what I'd missed before. The tightness around his eyes, the forced curve of his smile. Or was I imagining it? Was I seeing what I expected to see now that I knew the truth? My phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to handle her reaction to this news. She'd been one of the people who'd believed John's story completely, who'd lectured me about the sanctity of marriage and how I'd thrown it all away. How would she react when she learned her son-in-law had orchestrated the whole thing? The voicemail notification popped up, and against my better judgment, I listened. Linda, honey, I just got the strangest call from David. He was saying something about John and lies, and I don't understand what's happening. Call me back, please. I'm worried about you. So David was making the rounds, spreading the truth to everyone who'd been deceived. Part of me was grateful. I wouldn't have to convince anyone myself. But another part felt exposed, like my private humiliation was being broadcast to the world. I poured myself another glass of wine and sat on the couch, surrounded by the debris of my marriage. Tomorrow I would face John. Tomorrow I would get answers. But tonight, I had to sit with the knowledge that the great love of my life had been nothing but an elaborate performance, and I had been too blind to see it. My phone buzzed with another text from Eleanor. Thinking of you. Remember, you survived the lie. You'll survive the truth too. But as I sat there in my empty apartment, staring at photos of a happiness that had never really existed, I wasn't sure she was right. The lie had nearly culled me, but at least it had left me with beautiful memories to hold on to during the dark nights. The truth had taken even those away, leaving me with nothing but questions and the echo of John's practiced, I love you. The wine made me drowsy, but I couldn't bring myself to go to bed. Instead, I curled up on the couch, still clutching our wedding photo. In my dreams, John was crying at our wedding again, but this time I could see the truth. They weren't tears of joy. They were tears of resignation, the tears of a man walking into a prison of his own making. And I was the prison. I woke to sunlight streaming through my windows and a pounding headache. My phone showed 17 missed calls and dozens of texts. Word had spread overnight. David's confession had opened floodgates I wasn't prepared for. There were messages from mutual friends expressing shock and outrage. John's mother had left 3 voicemails, each more hysterical than the last. My own mother had called 6 times, but I ignored them all. I had 4 hours until I would see John, and I needed to prepare. I showered, letting the hot water wash away the remnants of yesterday's tears. As I dressed, I chose carefully. Jeans and a sweater. Nothing that suggested I'd put too much thought into my appearance. I didn't want him to think this meeting meant more to me than it did, even though we both knew it meant everything. My reflection looked surprisingly normal. A little tired, maybe, but not like someone whose entire worldview had been shattered twice. Once by a false accusation, and again by learning the accusation was orchestrated by the person she'd trusted most. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the corner where we could talk without being overheard. The same table, I realized with a jolt, where we'd sat on our first date. Whether John had suggested this location for its significance or simply because it was convenient, I didn't know. I didn't know anything about his real motivations anymore. I ordered a black coffee and waited, my eyes fixed on the door. Every time it opened, my heart rate spiked. An elderly couple, a woman with a stroller, 2 teenagers laughing about something on their phones. Then, at exactly noon, John walked in. 5 years had changed him. His hair was shorter, with gray creeping in at the temples. He wore an expensive-looking suit. His marketing career had clearly progressed. But his face, the face I'd kissed thousands of times, was exactly the same. Handsome in that boy-next-door way that had first attracted me, those green eyes that I'd thought showed such depth of feeling. He spotted me immediately and paused, seeming to steel himself before approaching. As he got closer, I searched his face for signs of the actor I now knew him to be. But all I saw was nervousness, maybe even fear. "Linda," he said, stopping beside the table. "Thank you for meeting me." I gestured to the chair across from me, not trusting my voice yet. He sat down carefully, like the chair might explode. For a moment, we just looked at each other, 5 years of silence stretching between us. "You look good," he said finally. "Don't," I said, finding my voice at last. Don't do the small talk thing. Not after everything. He nodded, looking down at his hands. You're right. I'm sorry. I don't know how to start this conversation. How about with the truth? I suggested, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Though I guess that's not your strong suit. He flinched. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that, I said. But I'm here for answers, not revenge. So talk. Explain to me how someone can fake love for 6 years. Explain to me how you could watch me fall apart and feel nothing. I didn't feel nothing, he said quietly. That's what David doesn't understand. I felt everything. Guilt, shame, self-loathing, every single day. But not love, I said. He met my eyes then, and for the first time, I saw something real there. Pain. I wanted to love you. God, Linda, I wanted to love you so badly. You were everything anyone could want in a partner. Kind, funny, beautiful, devoted. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if I just kept going through the motions, eventually the feelings would come. So I was an experiment? My voice cracked. Let's see if John can learn to love? No, he said quickly. It wasn't like that. When we first met, I was attracted to you. I enjoyed your company. I thought that was enough, that love would grow over time. People always say that, right? That passionate love fades and companionate love takes its place. I thought what I felt was the beginning of something that would deepen. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. But instead of deepening, it just stayed the same. Pleasant, comfortable, but not love. Not the way you loved me. And the gulf between what you felt and what I felt got wider every day. So why not just tell me? I demanded. Why not be honest instead of constructing this elaborate lie? Because I'm a coward, he said simply. Because every time I tried to imagine that conversation, I saw your face. The way you looked at me like I hung the moon. How could I tell you it was all one-sided? How could I break the heart of someone who'd already been through so much? So instead, you broke it worse, I said. You made me think I was a cheater. You made me doubt my own sanity. I know, he said, his voice thick. I know what I did was unforgivable. But at the time, I convinced myself it was kinder. That if you had something concrete to blame, you could hate me instead of blaming yourself. I thought hatred would be easier to overcome than heartbreak. I laughed bitterly. Well, you were wrong. I did blame myself. For 5 years, I've blamed myself for something I didn't do. Do you know what that's like? To lose trust in your own mind? I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, I said. Sorry doesn't give me back 5 years of my life. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, the coffee shop bustled with normal people living normal lives, oblivious to the devastating conversation happening in the corner. David says you're doing it again, I said finally, with Cassandra. John's face went pale. What? He says he sees the same patterns, the same calculated gestures. Are you going to destroy her too when you realize you can't force yourself to love her? It's different with Cassandra, he insisted. I do love her. Do you? I challenged. Or are you just better at convincing yourself now? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know. I thought I did. But sometimes I catch myself setting reminders for romantic gestures. Sometimes I realize I'm performing again, and I panic. Then don't marry her, I said. For God's sake, John, don't put another woman through what you put me through. But what if I'm wrong? He asked. And for the first time, he sounded genuinely lost. What if this is just what love feels like for me? What if I'm broken somehow, unable to feel what other people feel? Then get therapy, I said. Figure yourself out before you destroy another person's life. He nodded slowly. You're right. You're right about everything. He looked at me then, really looked at me. Can you ever forgive me? I considered the question. Could I forgive the man who had taken my capacity for trust? Who had made me question every memory, every instinct? Who had let me suffer for 5 years rather than admit his own emotional limitations? I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today. He accepted that with another nod. I'll call off the wedding, he said. I'll tell Cassandra everything. She deserves the truth. She does, I agreed. Everyone deserves the truth. We sat there for another moment. Two people who had once promised each other forever. Now strangers separated by an ocean of lies. I should go, John said finally. Thank you for meeting me. For what it's worth, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I just wish I could have been the same for you. He stood to leave, then paused. The crying at our wedding, he said, that was real. I was crying because I knew I was trapping both of us in a lie, and I couldn't see any other way forward. Those were the only honest tears I ever shed in our relationship. Then he was gone, leaving me alone at the table where our relationship had begun, and now, finally ended. I sat there for a long time, processing everything he'd said. The coffee shop filled and emptied around me, but I didn't move. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. How did it go? I typed back. I survived. And I had. I'd survived the lie, and now I'd survived the truth. John would have to live with what he'd done, and I would have to find a way to rebuild my ability to trust. But for the first time in 5 years, I knew with absolute certainty that I had never done anything wrong. The guilt that had weighted me down for so long was lifting, replaced by something else. Not quite peace, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. I stood up, left money on the table for my cold coffee, and walked out into the afternoon sun. I had calls to return, explanations to give, a life to reclaim. But first, I was going to go home and throw away that box of wedding memories. Not because I was angry, but because I was finally ready to let go of a love that had never really existed. My phone rang as I reached my car. David again. This time, I answered. John just called me, he said. He told me about your conversation. Linda, I need you to know something. What he did was wrong, but he's not a monster. He's just a damaged person who handled things in the worst possible way. I know, I said. We're all damaged in some way. The difference is most of us don't destroy other people because of it. You're right, David said. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I will be, I said. And for the first time, I believed it. It's going to take time, but I will be. I drove home thinking about second chances and new beginnings, about the difference between the love we think we deserve and the love we actually deserve. John had thought I deserved better than his half-hearted affection, but he'd been wrong. What I deserved was honesty. What I deserved was the chance to make an informed choice about my own life, but I couldn't change the past. All I could do was move forward with the truth, as painful as it was. And maybe that was enough. Maybe knowing that my instincts had been right all along, that I had been faithful, that I had loved truly, even if I hadn't been loved in return, maybe that knowledge would be the foundation on which I could rebuild. I parked outside my apartment building and sat there for a moment, engine still running. The box of wedding memories waited in my closet, but suddenly I couldn't face going inside. Instead, I drove to the bank where we'd had our joint account. The teller recognized me despite the years that had passed. I need to close an old savings account, I told her. John and I had opened it for our future children, depositing $50 every month. I'd forgotten about it entirely during the divorce proceedings. She pulled up the account and frowned. There's been regular activity on this account, Ms. Thompson. Monthly deposits of $50, continuing right up through last week. My stomach dropped. John had kept depositing money for children we'd never have, maintaining the charade even after destroying me with his lies. The balance showed over $3,000. Close it, I said. All of it. As she processed the withdrawal, my phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. This is Cassandra. David gave me your number. Can we talk? I stared at the message, my hands trembling. John's fiancée wanted to talk to me, the woman who thought I was the villain in their love story. I typed back, yes. Her response was immediate. Coffee? Now? The Starbucks on Maple? 20 minutes later, I walked into the Starbucks to find a woman who could have been my sister. Same build, same dark hair, same nervous way of tucking it behind her ear. She spotted me and stood up, her engagement ring catching the light, the same style John had surprised me with years ago. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice shaky. I know this is weird, but John just called off our wedding and told me everything. About the fake cheating, about David helping him, about how he never really loved you. I sat down across from her, studying her face. She looked exactly how I'd felt yesterday. Devastated, confused, her whole world tilted off its axis. He said he's been doing the same thing with me, she continued, setting reminders for romantic gestures, practicing his responses. He showed me his phone. There was a reminder set for tonight to compliment C's cooking and suggest weekend trip. The casualness of it made me feel sick, reducing love to calendar notifications and practice scripts. How long have you been together? I asked. 3 years. We met at a work conference. He was so charming, so attentive, just like, she trailed off, looking at me with understanding dawning in her eyes, just like he was with you. Did he tell you about his family? I asked. How his parents had the perfect marriage? How he wanted what they had? Her face went pale. Yes. Word for word, probably. And about how his ex-wife's betrayal made him cautious about love, but I made him believe again. We sat in silence for a moment, two women processing the same devastating realization. The worst part, Cassandra said, is that I can't tell what was real. Was any of it real? When he held me after my father's death, was that calculated too? When he cried at my sister's wedding, was he practicing? I remembered asking myself the same questions. I don't know. Maybe some of it was real. Maybe he's capable of caring, just not loving. Not the way we loved him. David told me you spent years in therapy, thinking you'd cheated and blocked it out. 5 years, I confirmed. 5 years of questioning my own sanity, of wondering if I had some kind of split personality. My therapist even suggested hypnosis to recover the repressed memories. Cassandra's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and laughed bitterly. John, he wants to know if I'm okay, if I need anything. Still playing the caring partner even now. What are you going to do? I asked. I already packed his things. My brother is changing the locks as we speak. I'm not spending 3 years in therapy wondering if I'm crazy. She paused, then added, I'm sorry. That was insensitive. No, it's smart. I wish I'd had the truth from the beginning. She leaned forward. Can I ask you something? How do you trust anyone after this? How do you believe someone when they say they love you? I thought about it. I don't know yet. I'll let you know when I figure it out. We exchanged numbers before parting. As I walked back to my car, I felt strangely lighter. Cassandra wouldn't spend years drowning in false guilt. She wouldn't lose herself to addiction and self-doubt. In a twisted way, John had learned something from our relationship. This time, he'd confessed before causing irreversible damage. My phone rang as I drove home. My mother again. This time, I answered. Linda, thank God. I've been worried sick. David told me everything. I'm so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. You couldn't have known, I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. John fooled everyone. I should have trusted you. You're my daughter. I should have known you weren't capable of cheating. She was crying now. All those times I suggested you might have forgotten, that maybe the guilt was too much to remember. Mom, stop. It's okay. It's not okay. You needed me and I failed you. Just like I failed you when you were young, with all the chaos with your father and my marriages. I pulled into my parking spot and sat there, engine off, talking to my mother about our fractured relationship for the first time in years. She told me how John had called her the day after the accusation, crying about my betrayal, how he'd seemed so genuinely heartbroken that she'd never questioned it. He used your history against you, she said. He knew about your father's affairs, about my mistakes. He knew you'd be sensitive to the accusation of cheating because of our family history. I hadn't considered that angle, but she was right. John had weaponized my deepest fears against me. After we hung up, I finally went inside. The apartment felt different somehow, less haunted. I went straight to the closet and pulled out the box of wedding memories, but instead of throwing it away as planned, I sat on my living room floor and went through each item one more time. The wedding photos still showed a beautiful day. My happiness had been real, even if his hadn't. The love letters he'd written were still eloquent, even if they'd been crafted rather than felt. The ticket stubs still represented evenings where I'd laughed and felt joy, even if his laughter had been performed. My phone buzzed. Eleanor. Checking in. How are you doing? I looked around at the scattered memories and typed back. I'm reclaiming my past. My feelings were real, even if his weren't. She called immediately. That's beautiful, Linda. And true. Your love was real. Your loyalty was real. Your pain was real. None of that changes just because he was acting. As we talked, I began sorting the items differently. Things that were purely about him, his letters, photos where he was the focus, went in one pile. But photos of me laughing, tickets from shows I genuinely enjoyed, cards from friends who'd celebrated our engagement, those I kept. My life during those 6 years had been real, even if his love hadn't. Eleanor offered to come over, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone. After we hung up, I I found myself thinking about the money from the children's account, $3,000 built on a lie, but also on a hope I genuinely held. I grabbed my laptop and started researching. Within an hour, I'd found what I was looking for, a local organization that helped women leaving abusive relationships. The irony wasn't lost on me. John hadn't hit me, hadn't screamed at me, hadn't done any of the things we typically associate with abuse. But what else would you call systematically destroying someone's sense of reality? I filled out the donation form, designating the money for their emergency housing fund. Maybe it could help someone else escape a relationship built on lies. My phone rang again. David. I wanted you to know that I told our parents everything, he said without preamble. Mom's devastated. She wants to call you but doesn't know if you'd want to hear from her. She already called, I said. We talked. Good. That's good. He paused. I also wanted you to know that I'm going to therapy, to figure out how I could have participated in something so cruel, how I could have watched you suffer for 5 years and stayed silent. That's probably a good idea. Linda, I know I have no right to ask, but do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? I considered the question. I don't know, David. You helped him destroy me. You planted evidence while I slept. You watched me fall apart and said nothing. That's a lot to forgive. I know. I wanted you to know how sorry I am. After we hung up, I continued sorting through the memories. I found our lease agreement for our first apartment together, the place where John had practiced his I love yous in the mirror while I cooked dinner in the next room, blissfully unaware. A knock at my door interrupted my sorting. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw my neighbor Mrs. Smith from down the hall. She'd lived here longer than I had seen me through the divorce and its aftermath. I opened the door and she handed me a casserole dish. I heard you've had a difficult few days, she said simply. I thought you might not feel like cooking. The kindness of it made my eyes water. Thank you. How did you? Thin walls, she said with a gentle smile. I heard you crying last night, and I remember how you cried 5 years ago. Different tears this time, I think. I invited her in, and she sat with me among the scattered memories while I explained everything. She listened without judgment, occasionally patting my hand. You know what I think? She said when I finished. I think that man stole 5 years from you, but you survived. You're here, and now you get to decide what happens next. After she left, I ate her casserole while looking through the last of the photos. There was one from a Halloween party. I was dressed as a witch, John as a vampire. Fitting, in retrospect. He'd been draining me dry while I'd been casting imaginary spells, believing in a magic that didn't exist. My phone lit up with a notification from my banking app. The children's account closure had processed. $3,000 transferred, then immediately donated. It felt like closing a chapter. I spent the rest of the evening cleaning up the memory explosion in my living room. The keep pile was smaller than I'd expected, but more meaningful. These were my memories, my experiences, my joy, not his performance, but my reality. As midnight approached, I found myself thinking about work. I'd called in sick today and yesterday, but tomorrow I'd have to face my coworkers. Some of them had been there during the divorce, had seen me at my lowest. Would I tell them the truth? Would they believe me? My phone buzzed one last time. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Linda. This is Sarah, Cassandra's sister. She gave me your number. I wanted to thank you for meeting with her today. She's devastated, but says talking to you helped her feel less crazy. I'm sorry for what happened to you, and I'm grateful you were willing to help a stranger who thought you were the enemy. That takes incredible grace. I read the message twice, then set my phone aside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Work, more phone calls, the slow process of correcting 5 years of lies. But tonight, for the first time in days, I felt something approaching peace. I gathered up the photos I was keeping and put them in a new box. Not hidden in the closet this time, but on my bookshelf where I could see them. My past, complicated and painful as it was, didn't need to be hidden anymore. The donation receipt arrived in my email as I was getting ready for bed. $3,000 to help women escape bad relationships. Money that John had saved for children he'd never actually wanted with me, now helping strangers find freedom. I brushed my teeth and looked at myself in the mirror. Same face that had stared back yesterday, but something was different. The weight I'd carried for 5 years, the guilt, the self-doubt, the constant questioning of my own memory, was finally lifting. My phone showed one last message from Eleanor. Proud of you. Sleep well. I climbed into bed, the same bed where David had betrayed my trust while I slept. Tomorrow I'd start looking for a new apartment. It was time for fresh starts all around. As I lay there in the dark, I thought about John, probably lying awake in Cassandra's former apartment, surrounded by his packed boxes, about David, wrestling with his guilt, about Cassandra, processing her own devastation, about all the friends and family who'd believed the lie and were now grappling with the truth. The ripples of John's deception would spread for a while yet, but I was done drowning in them. Tomorrow I'd wake up knowing with absolute certainty that I'd never cheated, never betrayed anyone, never been the villain in John's carefully crafted story. For the first time in 5 years, I fell asleep without wondering what I'd forgotten. There was nothing to remember because there had never been anything to forget. Just a man who'd been too cowardly to speak his truth, and a woman who'd loved him with her whole heart. The truth hadn't set me free, not yet, but it had given me something I'd lost. The knowledge that my instincts had been right all along. I'd known I was innocent. Now, finally, so did everyone else.